What if I told you that trying to be highly productive in your first week on a new job is actually the fastest way to just completely ruin your reputation?
I mean, it sounds incredibly counterintuitive, right? Especially for, high performers who are just wired to add value immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
But stepping into a new ecosystem and immediately trying to run the machinery without understanding the wiring, that usually leads to catastrophic and very public short-circuiting.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you know that feeling. You are standing outside a massive glass office building. Your heart is doing that weird, fast, fluttery thing against your ribs. Your palms are slightly sweaty. You've got a mix of absolute thrill because, well, you actually landed the job, and sheer, unadulterated terror because you suddenly realize you are stepping into a complex, pre-existing social and professional universe.
Right, a universe you know nothing about.
Exactly. You don't know the dialect they speak in their meetings. You don't know the invisible hierarchy. You don't know the political landmines, and yet, you are expected to somehow seamlessly blend in. It's a wildly unnatural scenario when you really stop to think about it.
It is entirely unnatural. We are taking an individual and inserting them into a highly developed, delicate social ecosystem.
Right.
The friction of that insertion is what causes that autonomic nervous system response you're describing. Your brain is literally registering it as a threat environment because of the sheer volume of unknown variables.
Which brings us to our mission for this deep dive. Today, we are decoding the ultimate survival manual for you, drawing exclusively from a remarkably insightful text called Success in Your New Job, the Onboarding Guide. The mission here is to totally dismantle that anxiety. We want to take you from being the terrified new person to transforming you into a hyper-prepared, highly observant, and seamlessly integrated operator.
That's the goal.
Yeah. We are talking about mastering the unspoken social codes, strategically handling the inevitable blunders, and engineering trust from day one.
And my approach for our discussion today is going to focus heavily on the underlying architecture of human behavior.
Okay, I like that.
We aren't just going to look at the tactical advice the guide offers. We really need to analyze the psychological and neurological why behind these actions.
Right. The why is so important.
Exactly. Like, how do small strategic interventions drastically lower your cognitive load? Because when you reduce that mental strain, you free up the bandwidth required to actually read the room and accelerate your integration.
Makes total sense. So let's start by looking at where things usually go wrong, which, surprisingly, is before you even set foot in the lobby.
Yeah.
The guide makes a compelling case that the foundation of a calm first day is constructed entirely in the days prior. It's the pregame.
The pregame is everything.
Right. And the absolute focal point of this pregame is the welcome email. Now, normally we just skim these things, right? See you Monday, here's the address. But our source frames this document as a critical piece of psychological armor.
Because it is your only source of hard data in an environment otherwise characterized by complete ambiguity.
Wow, yeah.
Without extracting the specific operational intelligence from that email, you are stepping into a high-stakes environment entirely blind.
So true. The text highlights 4 specific data points you have to extract and mentally lock in. First, obviously, the exact start date.
Right.
Second, the precise arrival time. Third, the location. And fourth, and I think this is the brilliant one that prevents that horrific lobby panic.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly who you were supposed to ask for at the front desk when you walk in.
And look at this through the lens of decision fatigue and cortisol regulation. Think about what that email is functionally doing.
Okay.
Is an uncertainty reduction mechanism. When you are walking up to that glass building, your brain is processing thousands of new inputs per second.
Right, the architecture, the security protocols, the faces of the people walking past you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your working memory is already nearing capacity. If you also have to expend mental energy wondering, wait, did they say 8.3 or 9.00?
Yeah. Oh, that's the worst feeling.
Who am I supposed to ask for?
Yeah.
Is it John in HR or Sarah in operations? Your cortisol levels just spike. You enter a state of mild panic before you've even met your manager.
Yeah, you're already sweating.
Right. By hard-coding those 4 logistical details beforehand, you eliminate unnecessary stress variables. You preserve your cognitive bandwidth for the interactions that actually matter.
But I want to push back on the next phase of this pregame, though.
Okay, go for it.
The guide goes hard on the administrative preparation, getting your official forms of identification, your banking documents, all of that sorted and placed into a single, dedicated physical folder the night before.
Yes.
Now, I understand being organized, But let's be real. If I show up and tell the HR rep, hey, I completely forgot my banking document, I'll email you the routing number this afternoon. Does that really matter?
I hear this all the time.
Right. Am I really damaging my reputation on minute 10 of the first day over a piece of paper?
That is a very common assumption, and it's one that deeply misunderstands the sociology of organizational structures.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Will forgetting a banking document destroy your career trajectory? Of course not. But we have to look at this from the perspective of the administrative personnel. Their entire professional existence is highly process-driven.
Yeah.
They are managing the onboarding pipelines for dozens, sometimes hundreds of individuals.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't think about that volume.
Right. When you say, I'll email it later, you haven't just delayed a piece of data. You have actively created an exception to their standardized process. You have generated unstructured follow-up work for them.
Oh, I see. You've become a loose end.
Exactly. You are a loose end. Conversely, when you sit down and they ask for your documentation and you smoothly produce a single meticulously organized folder containing exactly what they need,
You look like a rock star.
you establish a powerful baseline reputation. You are projecting competence, high organizational capacity, and crucially, a deep respect for their time and their systems.
Wow.
You are signaling, I am a low-friction colleague. That halo effect colors every subsequent interaction you have with the administrative arm of the company.
I am a low-friction colleague. I love that framing. It's not about the paper at all.
No, not at all.
It's about the meta message you are transmitting, which transitions perfectly into the physical arrival because that entire morning is an exercise in transmitting meta messages.
Absolutely.
Armed with your organized folder, you arrive at the building. But the guide is adamant that how you arrive, and specifically how you present yourself visually, is setting the tone before a single word is exchanged.
Humans are incredibly rapid, visually dominant processing machines. We synthesize visual data and form deep-seated character judgments in milliseconds.
Milliseconds.
Literally milliseconds, long before the conscious brain has a chance to evaluate the person's actual competence.
And that biological reality is why the guide establishes a golden rule for wardrobe strategy, right? It says it is always better to be slightly overdressed than underdressed. It's a risk mitigation strategy.
Precisely. It is about asymmetric risk.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, if you are overdressed, you might feel a brief moment of internal awkwardness, but the external signal you are sending is one of high respect for the institution and the opportunity. You are taking this seriously.
Right. They think, wow, they really care about this job.
Exactly. If, however, you are underdressed, if you misjudge the culture and show up far too casually, the signal you inadvertently transmit is one of disrespect, poor judgment, or a profound lack of self-awareness.
Oof.
It is incredibly difficult to recover intellectual authority when your visual presentation is signaling negligence.
The guide offers some solid baselines to avoid that negligence. Sharp trousers, collared shirts, making sure everything is pristine.
Yes, clean and ironed.
But I want to move from how you look to how you actually move through space and time that morning.
Yeah.
The text advocates for something called the practice run.
Ah, yes, the practice run.
Doing the actual commute to the office a few days prior at the exact time of the morning rush hour, not on a Sunday afternoon.
Because Sunday afternoon traffic data is worse than useless.
Right.
It provides a full sense of security. You have to map the friction of the actual ecosystem you will be navigating, the train delays, the traffic lights.
Yeah. And the entire point of this practice run is to guarantee you hit what the guide calls the sweet spot of arrival, which is exactly 10 to 15 minutes early. Now, I used to think arriving 30 or 40 minutes early showed incredible dedication, but the text warns against that.
Because arriving 40 minutes early doesn't make you look dedicated, it makes you look socially uncalibrated.
Wait, really? Uncalibrated?
Yeah. You end up hovering in the lobby, you make the receptionist anxious, and you potentially pressure your manager to drop their morning routine to come deal with you before they're ready.
I hate when people do that to me.
Right. But showing up right on the dot, or God forbid 5 minutes late, is a disaster.
Yeah, you're starting in the negative.
It creates a cascading physiological failure. If you are rushing from a delayed train, sweating, checking your watch, your sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive.
You're just full of adrenaline.
You walk through the doors in a state of high physiological arousal. Fight or flight. You cannot actively listen, you cannot read social cues, and you cannot project calm authority when your body thinks it is fleeing a predator.
Wow, that's such a visceral way to put it. Fleeing a predator.
Hitting that 10 to 15 minute window allows you to enter the lobby, sit down, regulate your breathing, lower your heart rate, and step into your first human interactions from a place of grounded, intentional presence.
And you are going to need that grounded presence for what comes next. The guide outlines the choreography of the morning, starting with the lobby interactions, the initial handshakes, and then the real test, meeting the team.
Gauntlet.
The gauntlet. Your manager walks you over to a pod of desks. 6 people look up. They all fire off their names in rapid succession. Your brain is desperately trying to attach these random audio labels to these new faces while maintaining a polite, totally not panicked smile.
It is the ultimate stress test for human working memory.
It really is. I've always found this moment excruciating.
Everyone does.
But here is where the text offers an unbelievable sigh of relief. It explicitly states that nobody expects you to remember their names on the first day. The expectation is not perfect retention. It is simply polite engagement.
We have to understand the hard limits of cognitive architecture here. Think of your working memory like the RAM in a computer.
Okay.
It generally has 4 to 7 slots available for new, unencoded information. When you meet 6 new people in a highly stimulating, novel environment, those slots are instantly filled.
Right, the RAM is maxed out.
If you expend all your cognitive energy desperately trying to retain the name David, you will completely miss David's tone of voice, his body language, and the social dynamics between him and the person next to him.
You essentially freeze your system trying to run an impossible background process.
Exactly. The text's reassurance is vital because acknowledging your cognitive limits allows you to drop the performance. It is entirely acceptable and, frankly, a sign of high social intelligence to go back later and say, I am so sorry, my brain is processing a lot today. Could you tell me your name one more time?
That feels so much better than guessing and getting it wrong.
It demonstrates vulnerability and a genuine desire for accuracy, which builds rapport much faster than pretending you remember and getting it wrong a week later.
I love the idea that vulnerability actually builds rapport faster than forced perfection. So you survive the introductions and you are led to your desk, your home base, as the text calls it.
Right.
This is where you get your IT setup, which is usually a whirlwind of temporary passwords and network protocols. The text stresses capitalizing on the IT person's presence to ask all the technical questions immediately.
Do not let them leave until you know everything.
Yeah, printer access, internal network routing, all of it, rather than waiting until you have a deadline to figure out the hardware. But it's the physical mapping of the office that I found really interesting.
The environmental orientation.
Yes. The manager gives you the tour. Restrooms, supply closets, emergency exits. But the guide specifically designates learning the coffee machine as a vital survival skill. And it's not just about the caffeine, is it?
Not at all. The coffee machine or the water cooler or whatever the central hydration station is in that particular office represents the primary informal social node of the organization.
The social node.
Yes. It is where cross-departmental collisions happen. It is where you observe the unstructured hierarchy of the company. Mapping these physical spaces isn't just about knowing where to get a drink. It's about eliminating the low-level background anxiety of physical dislocation.
Right?
When you know the terrain, your brain stops scanning for threats and starts observing the culture.
That transition from scanning for threats to observing the culture is the perfect bridge into the core philosophy of this guide. We have navigated the morning, we are at our desks, we are officially employees. This is where almost everyone, myself included, makes a massive tactical error. We think it's time to start cranking out work.
Oh, huge mistake.
We want to prove they didn't make a mistake hiring us. But the guide introduces a massive paradigm shift. It says your job in week 1 is not to produce. Your job is to be a sponge.
The urge to immediately prove your worth through tangible output is incredibly strong, especially in highly competitive individuals.
Totally.
But acting on that urge without understanding the underlying operational context usually leads to catastrophic errors. You end up optimizing a process that the company actually abandoned 6 months ago, or you step on the toes of a key stakeholder because you didn't understand the political landscape.
You just end up making a mess.
Exactly. Embracing the sponge phase requires immense professional discipline.
The text outlines this structured period of absorption, the onboarding phase, as a dual track system. You have the administrative track, which is your HR orientations, learning the rule book, understanding the compliance boundaries. And then you have the operational training track, where senior team members walk you through the architecture of the product, the customer profiles, the specific software stacks.
The real meat of the job.
Yeah. And to survive this influx, the guide demands you employ two specific learner skills. The first one seems rudimentary, but it's framed as non-negotiable. Relentless note-taking.
If we return to our RAM analogy, relentless note-taking is the act of offloading data onto an external hard drive to prevent your system from crashing.
But it's more than just memory retention, isn't it? The text implies there's a heavy performative aspect to it as well.
Absolutely. Think about it from the perspective of the senior team member training you. They are taking time away from their own deliverables to explain a complex internal process to you.
Right, they're stressed too.
When you write down the key steps, you are actively validating their effort. You're projecting deep engagement. More practically, a senior colleague will gladly explain a complex workflow to you once. They will be happy to clarify a nuanced point twice.
Okay.
But if they have to explain the fundamental steps a third time because you simply sat there nodding without writing anything down, you have permanently damaged your credibility. You have signaled that you do not value their time.
Which perfectly sets up the second critical learner skill. And this is where the guide dives into some fascinating cultural sociology. Asking questions.
This is crucial.
Now, in some environments, asking a question is a sign of weakness. But the text explicitly states that in modern, healthy corporate cultures, especially, American work culture, asking questions does the exact opposite. It makes you look engaged, intelligent, and safe.
That last word is the key. Safe. What's fascinating here is that in certain hierarchical cultures globally, asking a question can be perceived as an admission of devastating ignorance, or worse, a subtle challenge to the authority of the person explaining it.
Right, like you're questioning their teaching.
Yes. But the guide actively dispels this for the modern knowledge work context. If you're given a complex task and you ask 0 questions, the manager doesn't think you are a genius. They think you are a liability.
A liability.
They assume you are going to blindly guess, make a structural error, and create a massive mess for them to clean up later.
The guide even provides the exact phrasing to use. It suggests saying something like, "Excuse me, I have a quick question. Could you please explain what that specific term means in this context?"
That phrasing is surgically precise.
How so?
Well, it is deferential, which respects the hierarchy. It is bounded a quick question, which respects their time, and it is highly specific. It signals active, real-time cognitive processing.
So you're not just saying, "I don't get it."
Right. You aren't asking them to repeat the whole hour. You're asking for the final piece of the puzzle to lock the concept into place.
I love how we are framing this onboarding exhaustion. We usually view that end-of-day brain fog during the first week as a sign that we are failing, that we can't hack it.
It feels like drinking from a fire hose.
Exactly. But the guide frames that deep neurological fatigue as the ultimate metric of success. If you are exhausted, it means the sponge phase is working. Your brain is literally building new neural pathways to accommodate the ecosystem.
You're evolving.
But here's where the survival manual takes a sharp turn away from the official onboarding schedule. The employee handbook gives you the written rules, but the text transitions to a far more dangerous landscape.
The unwritten rules.
Yes. It points out that every single office on Earth operates on an invisible, undocumented rulebook. And the only way to learn it is to become what the guide calls an office anthropologist.
Office culture is, without question, the most difficult aspect of a new environment to navigate, precisely because it exists entirely in the realm of the unspoken. It is the dark matter of the organization.
The dark matter.
You can't see it, but its gravitational pull dictates how everything actually moves.
The guide defines this culture as the collection of shared values, social customs, and acceptable behaviors. And it breaks the observation of this dark matter into 4 specific areas. The first area is observing communication and tone. Because, as the text implies, how a message is delivered is often vastly more important than the content of the message itself.
The medium is the message, to quote Marshall McLuhan.
Right. The guide prompts you to watch how information flows. If a colleague has a quick question, do they stand up and walk over to a desk? Do they default to a digital chat platform like Slack or Teams? Or do they draft a formal, multi-paragraph email?
If you misread this, the friction is immediate.
How bad could it be?
Think about it. If you walk over to someone's desk for a quick chat, In a culture that strictly guards deep work time and prefers asynchronous chat messages, you aren't just seen as inefficient. You're perceived as a hostile interruption. You are a threat to their workflow.
A threat just for saying hi. And then there's the tone of the communication. Are we starting emails with, "Dear Mr. Davis," or "Hey, Mark"? Are we using emojis, or is it strictly clinical?
This is about frequency matching. If you send a highly formal, rigid, heavily structured email in an environment where the CEO uses thumbs-up emojis to approve million-dollar budgets, you will be perceived as hopelessly stiff, bureaucratic, and culturally alien.
Yeah, you look like a robot.
Conversely, if you drop a crying laughing emoji into an update in a highly traditional conservative financial firm, you instantly vaporize your professional authority. You have to tune your transmitter to the frequency of the room.
Okay, area 2 of our anthropological study, the lunch microculture. I found this section absolutely brilliant because it touches on the biggest lie in corporate America, the 1-hour lunch.
Oh, yes, the mythical 1-hour lunch.
Right. The official handbook says you get an hour. The reality of what people actually do is the true cultural indicator.
Lunch is the primary social crucible of the workday. It is the most accurate, real-time indicator of the organization's true work-life balance and internal stress levels.
The text urges you to observe. Does that 1-hour lunch actually mean taking 12 minutes to rapidly consume a sandwich at your desk while maintaining unbroken eye contact with a spreadsheet?
Sadly common.
Or do people physically detach, move to a communal kitchen, and discuss things unrelated to work? Or do factions actually leave the building and go to restaurants?
If the culture is desk eaters, and you casually stroll out for a 60-minute culinary adventure every day at noon, you are inadvertently signaling a lack of commitment, regardless of your actual output.
And the guide provides a phenomenal networking hack for navigating this in the early days. It suggests noticing a group getting ready to go out and saying, "Are you all heading out for lunch? Do you have any recommendations for a good place nearby?"
That is a master class in low-stakes social maneuvering. Think about the psychology of that interaction.
Okay.
You are not aggressively demanding an invitation, which would be socially intrusive and force them into an awkward position. Instead, you are asking for their local expertise. It flatters them.
Yeah, everyone loves to give advice.
Exactly. It establishes them as the veterans of the environment, and it provides a perfectly frictionless opening for them to naturally extend the invitation. "Oh, we're actually heading to the deli around the corner. Do you want to just come with us?" It's social engineering at its finest.
Okay. Moving to area 3, dress code realities. We talked about day 1 overdressing, but now you're settling in. The handbook might say the code is business casual, but business casual is arguably the most useless, vague term in the English language.
It means nothing.
It spans everything from chinos and a blazer to dark jeans and a sweater.
It is a massive spectrum. The text advises a period of calibration. You observe the upper and lower bounds of what is actually worn by the influential members of your team, and you adjust your aesthetic to land safely in the middle.
So don't be the best dressed or the worst dressed.
Exactly. If you remain in a full tailored suit when the rest of the department is in hoodies, you create an artificial visual barrier to integration. It creates unnecessary psychological distance.
Area 4, the true relationship with time. The official hours might be 9:00 a.m. to 5:00 p.m., but the anthropologist needs to discover the actual temporal border.
The real hour.
Right. Do people trickle in at 9:15? Do they strategically arrive at 8:45 to be seen drinking coffee before the manager arrives? At 5:00 p.m., is there a mass exodus? Or is leaving at 5:00 p.m. viewed as a lack of dedication?
This is about demonstrating commitment in the specific dialect of that office. If the unspoken cultural consensus is that the truly serious employees are at their desks functioning by 8:45 and you stroll in at 8:59, while technically contractually on time, you are culturally marking yourself as someone who does the absolute bare minimum.
I have to ask, though, all of this observation, reading between the lines of emojis and lunch habits, how long does this actually take? Is there a moment where the guide says, okay, by week 3, you should have cracked the code?
The guide is very realistic about this. It acknowledges that deciphering the dark matter takes weeks, sometimes months, of careful, sustained observation. Yes, you will not understand the complex social undercurrents in week 1. The objective is not immediate mastery. It is to remain that highly observant, low-impact anthropological mindset, gradually mimicking the established norms until the mimicked behavior becomes natural integration.
So you've watched, you've calibrated your emojis, you've figured out the lunch routines, you are integrated enough that your manager finally trusts you with an actual consequential assignment. We have reached the critical pivot in the guide. Execution. Handling the first real task.
This is the inflection point, the transition from theoretical potential to practical value creation.
Let's set up the scenario the text uses. Your manager walks over and outlines a project. Let's say they want a comparative analysis of 3 key competitors, looking at product features and pricing models, and they need it for presentation on Friday.
Okay.
The text lays out absolute ironclad rules for the moment this delegation occurs. Rule 1. 100% active attention. Phones are face down or away. Other monitor windows are minimized. You are locked in.
Because divided attention during task delegation is the genesis of almost all execution failures. It also signals profound disrespect for the manager's operational authority.
You are taking meticulous notes as they speak. But then, the guide introduces what it calls a supremely powerful communication tool. It's the technique of summarization. Before the manager walks away, you repeat the parameters of the task back to them in your own words.
I would argue this is the single most valuable tactical mechanism in the entire onboarding guide.
Really? It seems so simple. The script the guide offers is just, let me make sure I am completely aligned with you on this. The objective is a comparative analysis of our 3 main competitors, focusing on features and pricing, and the hard deadline is this Friday by noon. Is that accurate?
It seems simple, but let's break down the mechanics of why it is so potent. Information transfer between human beings is inherently lossy.
Lossy,
Yeah.
like an audio file.
Yes, exactly. Think of the childhood game of telephone. What the manager conceptualizes in their head, what they actually articulate, what you physically hear, and how your brain interprets that audio are often 4 entirely different things.
Oh, wow.
By actively summarizing, you force an immediate, real-time reconciliation of those differences.
You are basically establishing a verbal contract.
Exactly. It confirms your understanding and allows the manager to instantly correct any dangerous misinterpretations. Imagine if they actually meant the top 5 competitors, but misspoke and said 3.
That would be bad.
If you don't summarize, you deliver the wrong project on Friday. If you summarize, they correct it on Monday. Furthermore, it builds immense professional credibility because it demonstrates to the manager that you are meticulous, you are analytical, and you prioritize precision. The psychological relief a manager feels when an employee perfectly summarizes a task back to them is profound.
Once you've locked in the parameters with that summary, the text says you move immediately to asking targeted, clarifying questions regarding execution. You ask things like, is there a specific internal database I should pull this pricing from? Or, is there a standard presentation template the team prefers for this kind of analysis?
Notice the difference between these questions and basic capability questions. You aren't asking how to do the analysis.
Right.
These questions demonstrate that you are thinking a step ahead to the execution phase. It shows you recognize that established efficiencies and templates likely exist within the ecosystem, and you are actively seeking to leverage them, rather than arrogantly reinventing the wheel and wasting hours of company time.
Now, individual tasks are one thing, but you also have to execute within the broader team dynamic. The text spends time on the strategy for your first few team meetings, and the advice is essentially, do not go in trying to be the loudest voice in the room. Your primary role in these initial meetings is to map the power structures.
You are observing the kinetic energy of the team. Who actually drives the agenda? It's usually the manager, but often there is a highly respected senior individual contributor who holds immense sway.
Like the silent leader.
Exactly. How does the team navigate conflict? When someone disagrees, is it a blunt, direct confrontation, or is it heavily couched in polite, indirect corporate speak?
But the guide notes you shouldn't just be a silent ghost in the corner. You need to prove you are tracking the conversation. And a great way to do this is by strategically asking for clarification on internal jargon.
Yes, the jargon.
Every company has an alphabet soup of acronyms. If they keep referencing the QRS initiative, the text advises politely interjecting during a natural pause to ask, excuse me, I want to make sure I'm following the context. Could you briefly clarify what the QRS initiative encompasses?
It demonstrates active tracking without derailing the meeting's momentum. It shows confidence, because an insecure person will sit in silence for an hour, pretending they understand an acronym they don't, rendering the entire meeting useless for them.
Then there is the inevitable reality of downtime. This happens to everyone in their first month. You finish that competitor analysis on Thursday morning. The manager is in meetings all day. You have absolutely nothing to do.
The worst feeling.
You feel incredibly awkward just sitting there staring at your screen while everyone around you is frantically typing. I love the proactive strategy the guide provides here. It says to physically stand up, walk over to a stressed-looking colleague and say, I have some capacity right now while I wait for review on a project. Is there any small piece of research or any administrative task I can take off your plate?
That is how you aggressively build social capital. It demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of organizational dynamics. It shows you view yourself not as a mercenary hired to complete isolated tasks, but as an integral component of the collective output of the team.
You're helping the team win.
You're optimizing the team's total capacity, not just your own.
The text also issues a massive warning here about handling diverse personalities while you are trying to build this social capital. It explores the need to adapt your approach to extroverted colleagues versus introverted colleagues.
And this touches on one of the most common and destructive cognitive biases in a new workplace, the fundamental attribution error.
Wait, unpack that for me. How does the attribution error apply to introverts and extroverts in the office?
The fundamental attribution error is our tendency to attribute someone's behavior to their internal character rather than their external circumstances or inherent processing style.
Okay, give me an example.
The guide explicitly warns new hires against misinterpreting an introverted colleague's quietness for personal unfriendliness. A new employee might sit near a highly introverted developer named Sarah. Sarah wears noise-canceling headphones, never comes over for small talk, and only communicates via terse chat messages.
So she seems cold.
Right. The new employee commits the attribution error. Sarah's cold. Sarah doesn't like me. Sarah is arrogant. In reality, Sarah is simply an introvert who requires deep, uninterrupted focus to code and finds verbal small talk cognitively draining.
Ah, I see.
Recognizing these different processing styles and respecting Sarah's boundaries by communicating via chat rather than hovering at her desk prevents massive interpersonal friction.
That is such a crucial distinction. We assume everyone operates on our emotional frequency, and when they don't, we take it personally.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's assume you are executing flawlessly. You are summarizing tasks, you are respecting the introverts, you are asking brilliant, clarifying questions. You feel like you are nailing it. But the guide guarantees 2 catastrophic internal experiences will still happen to you, regardless of how perfect your strategy is. You will experience profound overwhelm, and you will make a significant mistake.
They are not possibilities. They are statistical certainties of the complex onboarding process.
Let's tackle the overwhelm first. The text normalizes the feeling of being completely swamped. There will be a Tuesday in week 3 where your brain just hits a wall. You have 20 open loops in your head, a dozen new software interfaces, and you literally feel paralyzed. You don't know what to click on next.
We are back to the RAM analogy. It is the definition of cognitive saturation. The system is freezing.
The mechanism the guide provides to unfreeze the system is ruthless compartmentalization. When that paralysis hits, you must artificially narrow your field of vision. You pick one single, discrete task and you tell yourself, for the next 60 minutes, the rest of the company does not exist. I am only going to read this one piece of documentation. You break the massive, overwhelming whole into a tiny, digestible fraction. And the secondary strategy is the evening review. Taking those chaotic, frantic notes you scribbled during the day and actively rewriting them in the evening.
The evening rewrite is a powerful grounding exercise. It takes the fragmented, disorganized sensory data you absorbed and forces the brain's executive function to structure it logically. It moves the data from temporary, chaotic storage into organized, long-term comprehension. It physically restores your sense of internal locus of control.
But no amount of organized notes can prevent the inevitable, the mistake. The text outlines what it calls the crisis playbook, and it sets up a visceral nightmare scenario. You send that major competitor analysis off to the vice president, you feel great, you go get coffee, come back, casually scroll through the file, and your stomach drops through the floor.
Oh no!
The blood leaves your face, you realize you accidentally pulled the financial data from 2023 instead of 2025. The core metric of the entire report is fundamentally flawed, and it's already in their inbox.
The physiological response to this realization is intense and immediate. Your amygdala hijacks your brain. Adrenaline and cortisol flood your system.
You're in full panic mode.
Your brain interprets this professional error as a literal threat to your survival, triggering the classic fight, flight, or freeze response. And the deeply ingrained instinctive animal response is flight. It is the urge to hide, to delete the email, to pray they don't read it closely, or to find a way to subtly shift the blame to the database.
And the guide violently interrupts that instinct. It explicitly tells you what you must never do, never hide it, never hope it goes unnoticed, and never, under any circumstances, blame the software, the timeline, or another colleague.
Because attempting a cover-up or deflecting blame instantly transforms a mistake of competence into a mistake of character.
That's a huge distinction.
A manager can easily fix a competence error. They can teach you how to verify the date range on a database. They cannot fix a character error. If they catch you hiding a mistake, the foundation of trust is permanently shattered.
To prevent that, the guide lays out a strict 4-step recovery plan. Step 1, immediacy. You go to the manager the absolute second you realize the error, before they find it on their own and before they present it to anyone else. Step 2, unvarnished honesty. You walk in, make eye contact, and say, I have made a significant error on the report. No hedging. Step 3, sincere apology. I'm very sorry I failed to verify the date parameters on the export. Step 4, the solution. You never dump a bleeding problem on a manager's desk. You immediately pivot to the tourniquet. I've already rerun the query with the correct 2025 data, and I will have the updated verified report to you in 15 minutes.
What is truly fascinating about this sequence is what we call the paradox of the first mistake.
I'm not sure I understand. How can a massive error be a paradox? Doesn't it automatically prove I'm incompetent?
It feels like it should. You assume a mistake inherently lowers your manager's estimation of you. But handled correctly, executed precisely through those 4 steps, a mistake actually increases your manager's baseline trust in you.
Wait, they trust me more after I mess up their data?
Yes, because trust in a professional environment is not built in the absence of failure. It is forged in the crucible of recovery. Before the mistake, your integrity was theoretical. By owning the error immediately, without excuses, and presenting a solution under immense psychological pressure, you have provided hard, empirical evidence of your character.
Wow.
You proved that when things inevitably go wrong in the future, you will not lie to them. You proved you are accountable and solution-oriented. You just passed the most difficult character audition in the corporate world.
That completely reframes the sheer terror of messing up. Handled correctly, a failure isn't the end of your reputation, it's the cement that solidifies it. Okay, so you have survived the shock of the onboarding fire hose, you've mapped the dark matter of the culture, and you've navigated that terrifying first error with unshakable integrity. This brings us to the final phase outlined in the guide, the evolution, the month 1 check-in and integration. You hit a major milestone, usually around day 30 or day 90.
This represents a critical transition period. The training wheels are beginning to loosen, and the expectation shifts from pure absorption to autonomous contribution.
The text explains the mechanics of the check-in meeting. Your manager will schedule an informal sit-down. The guide stresses that you should not view this as a hostile performance review where you are fighting for your job. It is a calibrating mechanism. The manager usually opens with a broad, open-ended question like, so how are you finding everything so far?
The strategic response to this opening is very specific.
The text says your first move is to anchor the conversation in positivity and professional gratitude. I am really enjoying the complexity of the work. The team has been incredibly generous with their time, and I feel like I'm really starting to understand the architecture. Even if you are internally stressed, you lead with an acknowledgement of their investment in you. But then the guide highlights what it considers the ultimate power move of an elite employee. It is the art of proactive feedback extraction.
This single behavior definitively separates average passive employees from exceptional high-trajectory ones.
The power move is, do not sit there passively waiting for the manager to summon the courage to critique you. You proactively pull the feedback from them. You lean in and ask, I want to make sure I am aligning perfectly with your expectations. Is there any specific area I should be focusing on more heavily, or anything you'd like to see me doing differently in the next 30 days?
By initiating the feedback loop yourself, you drastically lower the social friction for the manager. Giving constructive criticism is deeply uncomfortable for most managers. They fear the employee will react emotionally. When you ask for it directly, you signal emotional maturity, profound confidence, and a deep egoless investment in continuous operational improvement.
But the real test comes when they actually give you that constructive criticism. Let's say the manager says, your research is incredibly thorough, but your presentations are too dense. They need to be much more concise. The text is draconian about the rule here. You must entirely suppress the biological urge to be defensive.
Because defensiveness is the absolute enemy of intellectual and professional growth.
The urge is to explain why it was dense. But I thought you needed all the background data, but the template forced me to format it that way. The guide says making excuses makes you look rigid and unteachable. Instead, you deploy a totally different sequence. You nod, you explicitly say thank you for that feedback, and then you ask a collaborative, clarifying question. Could you point to a specific slide in the last deck as an example of what you mean by more concise so I can calibrate for the next one?
By asking for a specific example, you do two things. First, you absorb the emotional sting of the criticism by moving the conversation from a judgment of your character to an objective analysis of a work product. Second, you immediately pivot the dynamic from adversarial to collaborative. You're now sitting on the same side of the table, looking at the slide together, defining what success looks like.
And part of that collaborative definition of success is setting forward-looking goals. The text advises concluding this check-in by agreeing on specific metrics for the next quarter. Things like, by day 90, I will be fully self-sufficient in the reporting software, or I will run 3 client meetings entirely independently.
It creates a shared objective roadmap. Ambiguity is removed.
Yeah.
You both have a contractual understanding of what exceptional performance will look like at the next check-in.
So post-check-in, the guide maps out how your daily existence shifts. You are officially becoming a valued insider. You transition from the person constantly asking for help to the person actively looking to take things off the plates of others.
You transition from a net consumer of team bandwidth to a net producer of team capacity.
You also shift your behavior in meetings. You aren't just observing the power dynamics anymore. You start injecting your own ideas. But the text suggests a very politically savvy way to do this. You build on the ideas of these established veterans. You say, David, that point about the pricing model is excellent, and it makes me think we could also apply that logic too. It is additive, collaborative contribution, not competitive grandstanding. And finally, the text touches on the importance of genuine social integration. Attending the optional company events, the team lunches, the awkward escape room outings.
Because eventually the professional integration relies heavily on the foundation of social integration. Trust is built in the spreadsheets, but it is solidified in the shared human experiences outside the immediate pressure of the deliverables.
The final mandate of the guide is to take total ownership of your own evolution. You don't wait for HR to schedule a training. You actively ask your manager, what specific skills should I be developing to prepare for where this department is heading next year? Are there courses I should take or books I should be reading? You become the architect of your own career trajectory. So let's step back and look at the massive terrain we've covered today. We started by dismantling the anxiety of the unknown through extreme, meticulous pregame preparation using the welcome email as a tool to regulate cortisol. We explored the visual risk mitigation of wardrobe and the autonomic regulation of the 10-minute early arrival. We paradigm shifted into the sponge phase, prioritizing relentless note-taking and the psychological safety of asking targeted questions over immediate, reckless productivity. We learned to operate as office anthropologists, decoding the unspoken dark matter of lunch cultures and time dynamics. We broke down the immense power of perfectly summarizing a delegated task to prevent lossy communication. We reframed the sheer terror of mistakes, learning how to use extreme accountability to forge unshakable trust. And finally, we explored the egoless art of extracting and implementing critical feedback.
It is a profoundly comprehensive behavioral architecture for surviving and dominating those crucial early months. But if we want to leave our listeners with a final paradigm-shifting thought, something that extrapolates the core philosophy of this entire text to its logical extreme, consider this concept. We've framed all these specific behaviors, the intense anthropological observation, the lack of ego in asking questions, the proactive search for feedback, the willingness to sit in the discomfort of being a beginner. We have framed these as survival skills for your first 90 days. But what if you never actually stopped onboarding?
I'm not sure I follow. You mean operating with that level of anxiety forever? Because that sounds exhausting.
Not the anxiety of the unknown. I mean the psychological posture of the beginner. Imagine you have been at a company for 5 years. You are a senior operator. You know the systems inside and out. But what if you intentionally treated every single new project, every shift in market dynamics, and every interaction with a brand new hire with this exact same day one beginner's mindset? What if you maintain that level of extreme, unbiased observation of the culture, recognizing that culture shifts over time? What if you still proactively walked over to colleagues in different departments and asked if you could help optimize their workflow? What if, even as a senior leader, You continue to ask fearless, clarifying questions in meetings instead of assuming you already knew all the answers. Imagine the incredible operational agility, the lack of complacency, and the continual compounded growth you would experience if you maintained that day one curiosity and rigorous execution for the entirety of your professional life.
That is a staggering thought. The idea that the ultimate survival manual for starting a new job is actually the blueprint for mastering your entire career. Because when you think about it, the absolute moment you stop acting like a sponge, the moment you assume you have completely decoded the environment and have nothing left to learn, that is the exact moment you begin to stagnate. You become rigid. You are suddenly back in that foreign country, only this time you don't even realize the map has changed and you are completely lost. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredibly deep dive. Take these concepts, build that organized folder, decode the dark matter of your office culture, embrace the paradox of the mistake, and take that relentless day one mindset into whatever your next great professional adventure might be. Picture this. It's a Tuesday morning. You are standing in the lobby of this massive glass and steel building.
Oh yeah, the classic corporate lobby.
Right. And you've only ever been inside exactly one time before, and that was for your interview.
And you were probably terrified then, too.
Exactly. But now you have this stiff, shiny new lanyard rubbing against the back of your neck.
Ugh, the worst.
It feels heavy, almost like a tracker, and you're holding a lukewarm coffee in a paper cup because you got to the parking lot like 45 minutes early.
Yeah.
Just to be absolutely safe.
Naturally, you can't be late on day one.
Right. So now you are just waiting for the elevator. You watch the numbers light up, descending toward the lobby, and your heart rate is doing something completely strange. It's fluttering.
Yeah.
It is your very first week at a brand new job.
It is a profound, it's almost primal state of vulnerability. I mean, your body is reacting exactly the way it was evolutionarily designed to react when you step into completely unknown territory.
It really feels like survival mode, doesn't it?
It is. You are walking into a pre-existing, highly established ecosystem.
Oh.
You do not know the history of this tribe. You don't know the power dynamics, the alliances, the hidden rivalries.
You don't even know where the good pens are.
Exactly. Or how the coffee machine works. And it's an environment that demands a really high level of performance from you.
Right.
Because, well, they're paying you to be there.
Right. Their expectations.
Huge expectations. But right now, in this exact moment, waiting for that elevator, you are starting entirely from scratch. You're the ultimate outsider.
That feeling of being the ultimate outsider is just, it's so universal. And usually when we sit down to talk about career advancement, we focus almost exclusively on hard skills.
Yeah, the technical stuff.
Right. We talk about the coding languages you need to master, or the sales targets, or, the complex financial spreadsheets. We treat work like a purely mechanical output.
Like you're just a machine producing value.
Exactly. But today, we are going in a completely different direction for this deep dive. The source material we are exploring today comes from a segment of the Clear English podcast.
Which is fascinating, by the way.
It really is, because on its face, this was designed as a resource for language learners trying to navigate English-speaking corporate workplaces.
Right.
But as we started digging into the actual notes, we realized something incredible. The insights here aren't really about grammar or vocabulary at all.
No, not at all.
They are a masterclass in human psychology. It's basically a literal blueprint for navigating the invisible social architecture of, any new environment you ever walk into.
Because what this material so brilliantly does is strip away all the technical aspects of a job. It reveals the underlying social mechanics that actually govern our day-to-day lives.
And that's really the mission for this deep dive, right?
Exactly. Our goal today is not to teach you how to execute your specific technical tasks. You already know how to do that. Your resume proved that, and that's why they hired you. Our mission today is to decode that invisible architecture. We want to extract the deep psychological insights from these notes to help you build real, functional relationships.
Seamlessly integrate into a completely foreign workplace culture.
Yes. And perhaps most importantly of all, do it without suffering from that massive, invisible cognitive burnout that usually accompanies a major job transition.
So let's frame this up with a visual, because I think the best way to understand what is actually happening in that first agonizing month on the job is to think about a board game.
I love this analogy.
Right. So imagine you've just been invited to a table with a group of people who've been playing this exact same deeply complex board game together every single Friday night for 5 years.
So they know every single rule inside and out.
Exactly. Now, your resume, your degrees, your technical skills, that is just your ability to read the official printed rule book. The rule book tells you how the plastic pieces are legally allowed to move across the board.
But that's not the real game.
No, the real game is the metagame happening entirely above the board. It's the shifting alliances between the players. It's the unwritten house rules they've developed over half a decade.
Right. It's knowing that Dave from accounting always bluffs when he holds a certain card.
Yes. Or that Sarah from marketing absolutely hates it when you take too long on your turn. You can have that official rule book memorized perfectly, but if you do not understand the metagame, you are going to get crushed.
Oh, absolutely crushed.
And managing your own mental stamina while you frantically try to figure out that metagame on the fly, well, that's the hardest part of being the new player.
That board game framework is perfectly aligned with the reality of workplace sociology, because the notes we are studying immediately tackle the very first unavoidable barrier to entry in this metagame.
The very first step.
Right. Long before you are ever asked to navigate complex project dynamics or, shine in a high-stakes strategy meeting, you have to conquer the most basic, foundational element of human interaction.
Small talk.
Small talk.
Ugh. The absolute dread of the modern professional. I mean, people hate it. But the notes specifically focus on these agonizing micro interactions.
Yeah, the really short ones.
Like those moments in the fluorescent lit break room while you're waiting for the drip coffee machine to finish its cycle. Yeah. Or that terrifying enclosed 30-second elevator ride with a complete stranger wearing a badge from a department you haven't even heard of yet.
It's so awkward.
It is. So the strategy outlined here introduces what they call the safe 3 topics to rely on when you are cornered in these moments. And they are the weather, the weekend, and the commute.
The classics.
Classics. Now, it also highlights a very specific conversational tactic of using open-ended questions, meaning questions that begin with what, how, or why.
We really need to pause right here and ask a fundamental question. Why do these specific mundane topics actually matter so much?
Because small talk gets a terrible reputation, right?
It gets the worst reputation in our culture. We constantly dismiss it as superficial or fake or just a tragic waste of productivity. You hear people say it all the time, I absolutely hate small talk. I'm an introvert. I only want to have deep, meaningful, authentic conversations.
I've said that myself, honestly.
Most of us have. But holding that perspective fundamentally misunderstands the entire anthropological purpose of small talk. Small talk is not, and has honestly never been, about exchanging groundbreaking factual information.
Wait, okay, so if it's not about information exchange, what is actually happening in my brain when I'm standing by the water cooler talking about how cloudy it is outside?
You are engaging in a low-stakes trust-building exercise. It is essentially the modern verbal equivalent of primate grooming.
Wait, primate grooming? Like monkeys?
Yes, like monkeys. If you look at evolutionary biology and primatology, apes and monkeys spend a massive amount of their day picking bugs, dirt, and leaves out of each other's fur. And they aren't doing this just because they are obsessed with hygiene. They're doing it to establish social bonds. It literally releases oxytocin in their brains. The physical act of grooming says, look, I am sitting right next to you. I am vulnerable. I am not attacking you. I'm not a threat to you. And we belong to the same broader group.
So it's a safety signal.
Exactly. Our human brains still require that exact same safety signaling before we can actually trust someone. But in corporate society, instead of picking fleas out of each other's hair,
which HR would definitely frown upon.
Highly frown upon. Instead of doing that, we talk about the traffic on Interstate 95. It serves the exact same neurological function.
That is wild. So when I say, wow, it's really pouring out there, my brain is essentially transmitting the signal, I am not a threat to you, please accept me into the tribe.
Yes, precisely.
But I have to push back on the strategy a little bit, because if I put myself in the shoes of someone on their very first day, I want to impress people.
Sure, you want to look smart.
Right. Isn't talking about the weather a massive, embarrassing cliche? If I'm the new person and I'm trying to make a good impression and show that I'm a sharp, interesting, highly capable hire, doesn't bringing up the rain just make me seem incredibly boring and one-dimensional?
It is undeniably a cliche, but I'll tell you this. It is a cliche for a highly specific, highly functional reason.
Okay, what is it?
The safe 3, weather, weekends, commute, are brilliant precisely because they're universal, shared human experiences that require almost zero cognitive load to process.
Zero cognitive load.
Right. Remember your overarching goal in that first week. Your goal is not to prove to a random stranger by the microwave that you are a fascinating, enigmatic genius. No. Your goal is to establish a baseline of psychological safety. Let's imagine you walk into the break room and immediately try to initiate a conversation about, say, the macroeconomic implications of artificial intelligence on global supply chains.
Oh my gosh, I would definitely spill my coffee if someone hit me with that at 8 a.m.
Exactly. You would startle people. And the reason you would spill your coffee is because they are demanding way too much cognitive energy from a stranger who hasn't even woken up properly yet.
That makes total sense.
To engage in that conversation, the other person has to immediately shift gears, access complex mental models, and formulate an intellectual response to someone they do not know and do not yet trust. It feels like an intellectual ambush.
An intellectual ambush. Wow. That is a great way to put it.
But the weather, on the other hand, is completely safe because it is an indisputable shared reality. The cognitive effort required to say, yeah, the rain was awful this morning, is basically zero.
Right.
It allows the other person to engage with you, to accept your verbal grooming without feeling stressed or cornered.
I see. So it's very much like a ping pong serve.
Ooh, yes.
When you are just starting a casual rally in ping pong with someone you've never played before,
Yeah.
you don't whip out some aggressive, spinning, underhanded backhand smash that the other person can't possibly return.
Right, because what happens then?
If you do that, the ball just flies past them, the rally is over before it even begins, and you just look like an aggressive joke.
Exactly.
You just tap the ball gently over the net. The serve doesn't need to be a flashy trick shot. It just needs to safely clear the net so the other person can comfortably hit it back, and then you can establish a shared rhythm.
That ping pong analogy is spot on.
Yeah.
And that is exactly where the strategy of using open-ended questions becomes so incredibly powerful in these micro-interactions.
Right. The what, how, and why questions.
Yes. The notes suggest starting questions with those words. When you ask an open-ended question like, how is the traffic for you coming in from the suburbs? You are gently lobbing that ping pong ball right into their absolute sweet spot.
Giving them an easy return.
Exactly. But more importantly, from a psychological perspective, you are strategically shifting the conversational spotlight.
Okay, break that down for me. What do you mean by the conversational spotlight?
When you are the new person, you inherently feel like there's this massive, blinding spotlight pointing directly at your face at all times.
Oh, yeah. You feel like everyone is watching you.
Yes, you feel like everyone is judging your clothes, your posture, your intelligence. And carrying that perceived spotlight is completely exhausting.
It really is.
So by asking an open-ended question like, what do you usually get up to on the weekends? You physically grab that spotlight and turn it onto them. And you accomplish two vital things simultaneously when you do that.
Which are?
First, you make them feel valued and interesting. Human beings generally love being invited to talk about their own experiences and opinions.
True, we all like talking about ourselves.
We do. And second, you take the immense pressure to perform completely off yourself. You get to stand in the shadows for a moment, nod, smile, and let them do the heavy lifting of the conversation.
Okay, this is a massive perspective shift. So what this actually means for you, the listener, tomorrow morning when you walk into that office, is that you need to completely reframe how you view these mundane interactions by the elevator.
Yes, completely reframe them.
You have to stop worrying about being interesting. The actual factual content of small talk absolutely does not matter. The function of the small talk is the entire point.
The function's everything.
You aren't trying to be fascinating. You are simply signaling to the established tribe, hey, I am approachable, I am safe, I am interested in existing peacefully in this shared space with you.
Precisely. You are establishing the foundation. But, as we know, you can't spend your entire career talking about the rain.
Right. Eventually, you have to do some work.
Eventually, once you have established that baseline of trust and psychological safety through those, say, 3 topics, you have to start moving up the ladder of complexity. Because you have to actually do the job you were hired for.
Which bridges us perfectly to the next massive hurdle of the new job experience. Small talk will get you a polite nod in the hallway. It will get you friendly, superficial acquaintances.
Yes.
But if you want to actually survive the dense operational labyrinth of a new environment, if you want to figure out the house rules of that complex board game we talked about, you need an actual ally.
A real ally.
You have to transition from superficial chatter to building a functional, informal support system.
This is a critical transition point in the new employee life cycle. The text we are analyzing introduces a concept that is absolutely vital for early survival, and it refers to this as the work buddy protocol.
The work buddy?
The work buddy. Now, the notes are extremely specific about the criteria you should use when identifying this person. A work buddy must be a peer. It should be someone who has been at the company for a little while, someone who knows their way around.
Right.
But crucially, it must not be your boss. It cannot be someone in your direct chain of command.
The notes actually give some great, highly relatable examples of the types of questions you would reserve specifically for this buddy. They are the things that feel incredibly silly or trivial to ask a manager.
Oh yeah, the really basic stuff.
Exactly. Questions like, how do I unjam the specific punter on the second floor? Or, which software portal do I actually use to submit a $20 lunch receipt? Or even simply, where's the best place to get a sandwich around here that won't cost me $25?
Right. And we need to look closely at the undercurrent of intimidation that the text brings up here. Because why do we need a dedicated buddy just to ask how a printer works?
Why not just ask anyone?
It comes down to imposter syndrome and the intense, pervasive fear of looking incompetent. Think about the reality of your first few weeks. You're likely hired after a rigorous interview process, right?
Right. Where you presented yourself as a highly capable, seasoned professional.
Exactly. You negotiated a salary based on your expertise, and yet, on day 3, you find yourself standing alone in a copy room, staring at a flashing red light on a massive machine.
Just feeling completely helpless.
Feeling like an absolute fraud because you literally do not know which tray holds the A4 paper.
It is the most humbling experience in the world. I mean, you have a master's degree, and you are being defeated by a blinking paper jam icon.
Exactly. Now, if your only point of contact for help in that entire building is your manager, the person who formally evaluates your performance.
The person who decides your bonus.
Yes. The person who literally controls your access to resources and your paycheck. If that's your only contact, your amygdala is going to scream at you not to show weakness.
Because it feels dangerous.
From an evolutionary standpoint, showing incompetence to the tribe leader threatens your status and your survival. So you will hesitate.
Right.
You will spend 45 minutes frantically opening and closing plastic panels, trying to fix the printer yourself. You will be sweating, quietly panicking, and wasting massive amounts of company time and your own cognitive energy.
All to protect your ego.
All to protect your ego and avoid walking into your boss's office to admit you don't know how to print a document.
Okay, let's build out an analogy for this, because the difference between a boss and a buddy is just so important to understand. Think about the difference between hiring a university history professor and grabbing a beer with a local tour guide.
Oh, this is a great comparison.
Imagine you just moved to Rome. Your manager is the university history professor. They are there to teach you the grand, sweeping vision of the city. They explain the complex history of the Roman Empire, the architectural significance of the Colosseum, the long-term strategic goals of the civilization.
The big picture.
The big picture. And when you meet with the professor, you want to impress them. You want to show them you understand that big picture and that you belong in their advanced seminar.
Right.
But here's the problem. The history professor is absolutely not going to tell you which tiny local bakery won't overcharge you for a croissant.
No, they don't care about that.
Right. They aren't going to tell you which subway line is historically always broken on Tuesday afternoons, or, how to use the bizarre coin-operated washing machine in the basement of your apartment building.
That is a phenomenal distinction. The professor operates in the realm of strategy. The tour guide operates in the realm of daily friction.
Right. To survive daily life in Rome, you need a local tour guide. You need someone who's just a regular citizen on the ground, someone who knows the actual unvarnished functional reality of the streets.
Yeah.
The buddy is your local tour guide. They are the ones who pull you aside and say, oh yeah, the printer on the second floor is a nightmare. It always jams if you put more than 20 sheets in the top tray. Just hit the blue flashing button twice and it resets.
What the buddy does on a deep psychological level is create a localized temporary zone of total psychological safety.
A safety zone.
Yes. In the presence of your buddy, that grueling requirement to appear perfectly competent and professional at all times is temporarily suspended. It becomes acceptable and even expected to look a little foolish.
You can just drop the armor.
You drop the armor. And the ripple effects of establishing this informal support system are massive for your onboarding timeline.
Wait, how so? How does knowing how to fix the printer actually accelerate my career trajectory?
Because it ruthlessly eliminates operational friction. Think about it. If you do not spend an hour sweating over the jammed printer, and you don't spend 30 minutes clicking through an internet maze trying to figure out how to submit an expense report.
Because you can just shoot a quick instant message to your buddy and get an answer in 10 seconds.
Exactly. If you do that, your actual work output accelerates dramatically. The mental energy you save by not panicking over the trivial stuff can now be redirected entirely into the complex, high-level work you were actually hired to do.
So you clear away the mundane friction so you can focus on the strategy.
Yes, you rely on the tour guide so you can eventually impress the professor.
I love that. And I think everyone can viscerally relate to that feeling of operational friction, that desperate sinking feeling of just wanting to ask a simple basic question without feeling like it is going to be entered into a permanent record reflecting your professional worth.
It's a huge relief to have someone to ask.
It really is. So, if you follow this blueprint, you've mastered the ping-pong serve of small talk, you've secured your local tour guide buddy to help you unjam the printer and find the good sandwiches, but that protective bubble can only last so long.
Right. Reality eventually sets in.
Because eventually you cannot hide in the safety of informal peer-to-peer networks forever. Eventually, you have to sit down in a closed room and face the official formal evaluation from the professor. You have to face your manager.
Yes, you do.
And this brings us to a part of the new job experience that induces more sheer biological dread than almost anything else: feedback.
The dreaded feedback.
How on earth do you handle the transition from asking your buddies silly questions to having your actual hard-earned performance dissected by your boss without going into a complete tailspin?
Well, the material we are analyzing provides a very clear, highly observant look at how this specific dynamic has evolved in modern corporate culture. We are, thankfully, moving away from the antiquated, terrifying model of the singular annual performance review.
Oh, where you sit in terror once a year to hear a list of everything you did wrong over the past 12 months.
Yes, it's an awful system. Instead, modern workplaces are moving toward regular one-on-ones, or check-ins. These are usually weekly or bi-weekly micro-meetings.
Okay, that sounds slightly better.
It is. The text outlines 2 primary, non-negotiable rules for surviving these interactions. First, when receiving constructive criticism, you must listen without taking it personally. You have to train yourself to view it simply as part of the learning process.
Okay, and the second rule?
Second, and this is where it gets highly proactive, you must explicitly ask for feedback before it is even given.
Wait, ask for it.
Yeah. The notes suggest using specific disarming phrasing like, "How am I doing so far?" and "Is there anything I should focus on improving next week?"
Okay, I have to stop you right there and push back heavily on that first rule. Don't take it personally.
I know, it's tough.
It is so incredibly easy to read those 4 words on a piece of paper or, hear a host say them on a deep dive. Don't take it personally. But work is inherently, deeply personal.
Of course it is.
Especially when you are brand new and you are trying so desperately hard to prove that you belong there. You have poured your physical energy, your time, your creativity, and your brain power into a project.
Yes.
Let's use another analogy because I think it helps here. Imagine you are a chef who has just been hired at a Michelin star restaurant.
High stakes.
Very high stakes. You spend all morning meticulously crafting what you believe is the absolute perfect signature soup. You simmer the broth for hours, you balance the complex spices, you plate it beautifully with a garnish. You are so proud of it.
Naturally.
And then the executive head chef walks over, takes one tiny spoonful, grimaces, and says, "It's too salty. Start over." You made the soup. The soup is a physical manifestation of your skills. How do you realistically, biologically detach your identity from the soup? It feels completely impossible not to take that as a personal attack on your abilities as a chef.
It feels impossible because, biologically speaking, it almost is impossible. Yes. This is exactly why the concept of the performance review has traditionally induced a literal fight-or-flight response in the human nervous system. Let's look at what is actually happening in your brain during that feedback session.
Okay.
When we are criticized, our amygdala, which is the primitive threat-detecting center of the brain, does not know that you are sitting in a climate-controlled office in the year 2026 discussing a spreadsheet or a bowl of soup.
It doesn't.
No, it operates on ancient evolutionary hardware. In early human primate tribes, being criticized meant you were losing status. Losing status meant you might be ostracized from the group. And being ostracized from the group meant you would literally starve or be eaten by a predator.
Wow.
Your brain equates social critique with physical death.
That is insane. So when my boss says my report lacks detail, my brain is literally dumping cortisol into my bloodstream as if I am being chased by a tiger.
Exactly. Your heart races, your defensiveness spikes, your face flushes, and you have this overwhelming urge to either argue back aggressively to protect your status in the tribe or just flee the room entirely.
I've definitely felt the urge to flee.
We all have.
Yeah.
This is why the modern evolution of the microfeedback loop, that weekly check-in, is such a brilliant organizational design. It is intentionally designed to systematically dismantle that biological panic response.
But wait, how does doing it more often make it less terrifying? Wouldn't weekly feedback just mean you are terrified every single week?
It's about the weight of the critique. If you only get feedback once a year, every single piece of criticism carries the massive accumulated weight of 12 months of perceived failure. The stakes are astronomically high.
Oh, I see.
But if you get feedback every single Friday, it is no longer a grand judgment on your worth as a human being. It is just a tiny 2-degree course correction. It removes the venom.
Okay, that makes sense. It lowers the stakes.
Right. Over time, it trains your amygdala to stop firing the alarm bells, changing the feedback from a personal indictment of your character into just plain data. It becomes a simple calibration metric.
Wow.
But going back to your soup analogy, the absolute key to achieving that Zen-like emotional detachment, to actually surviving the salty soup moment without an emotional breakdown, lies in the second rule from the text.
The proactive questioning, the part where you say, what should I focus on improving next week?
Yes. Proactive questioning is the ultimate ninja-level tool for emotional detachment.
Really? How so?
Let's analyze the invisible power dynamics of a standard feedback session. Usually, you are sitting there passively in a chair, waiting for the authority figure across the desk to hand down their judgment upon you.
Right, you feel completely powerless.
You are in a position of profound helplessness and vulnerability. You are just waiting to be struck. But the exact second you open your mouth and ask the question, is there anything I should focus on improving next week? You fundamentally and permanently alter the power dynamic of the room.
Wait, so by asking for the critique before they can give it to me, I'm actually neutralizing the power imbalance. I never thought about it as a defensive strategy.
It is the ultimate defensive strategy because it seizes the initiative. You are no longer a subordinate passively receiving judgment about your past mistakes.
Right.
By asking the question, you have instantly transformed yourself into an equal collaborator who is actively planning for future success. You are taking the steering wheel out of their hands.
That is genuinely profound. I mean, by asking the question, you are taking complete ownership of the critique before it is even delivered to you.
Yes.
You're looking at the head chef and saying, I know the soup isn't quite perfect yet. I know my palate is still calibrating to this restaurant. What specific spice should we adjust for tomorrow's batch?
That is exactly it.
You are demonstrating that famous corporate buzzword, the growth mindset, in real time, live action. You aren't just passively nodding and saying you want to learn. You are forcefully dragging the learning process into existence.
Absolutely.
And beyond protecting your own ego, it proves to your manager that you aren't fragile. It proves you can handle the heat of the kitchen without shattering.
And we cannot overlook how much your manager will appreciate this. It is a brilliant strategic move because it builds immense trust.
Managers like it when you ask for feedback.
Yes, because managers are humans too. And they are often just as uncomfortable and anxious about giving negative feedback as you are about receiving it.
That's a good point. It's awkward for them too.
It's an awkward conversation for everyone involved. By proactively opening the door yourself, you remove the tension. You make their job infinitely easier, which immediately makes them view you as a highly mature, low-maintenance professional.
Okay, so we've covered the private closed-door dynamics. You know how to talk to your peers, and you know how to disarm your boss in a one-on-one. But feedback in a private room is only half the battle.
Only half.
Because in a corporate environment, the vast majority of your professional capital, your overarching reputation, your perceived value to the organization is forged or completely destroyed in a very public forum.
Meeting room.
Exactly. Which naturally bridges us to the next massive social challenge of the new job: how to navigate the absolute minefield of meeting etiquette in your early days.
Meetings are the public square of the modern workplace. They are the stage where the metagame is played out in full view of everyone.
And they can be terrifying when you're new.
Absolutely. The notes we are studying offer a very specific, highly disciplined strategy for that critical first week of meetings. It says, listen and observe.
Just listen and observe.
Yes.
Yes.
It explicitly instructs the new employee to take copious notes, but not just on what factual information is being discussed.
Right.
You're supposed to take notes on how people are interacting and presenting their ideas.
Okay.
And it provides a brilliant linguistic tool if you happen to be put on the spot and called upon. It suggests prefacing any contribution with phrases like, "from my perspective," or, even better, "I'm still learning the process, but..."
I like that.
This is designed to demonstrate that you are mentally engaged while maintaining an essential posture of humility.
Okay, let's unpack that instruction to just listen and observe for a whole week, because I can easily imagine someone listening to this right now thinking, if I just sit there silently in the corner of the conference room, furiously taking notes in my little notebook for 5 days straight and not contributing any brilliant ideas, won't my new boss think they made a terrible hiring mistake?
That's a common fear.
Won't the team think I'm totally disengaged or incredibly intimidated or just acting like a useless piece of furniture taking up space? I mean, we are constantly taught by business books that we need to lean in, speak up, and make an immediate impact to prove our worth. Telling me to be quiet feels completely counterintuitive.
It does feel that way.
I imagine joining a new team's meeting rhythm is a lot like trying to jump into an intense game of double Dutch jump rope.
Oh, the double Dutch analogy is perfect for this. Let's explore that.
Right. Think about it. You have two heavy ropes spinning in opposite directions very fast. The team has been playing this exact game together for years. They know exactly how to hop in, when to duck, and when to hop out without missing a beat.
They have the rhythm down perfectly.
But the rhythm is completely internalized for them. Now, you are the brand new person. If you just close your eyes, desperately want to prove you can jump, and sprint blindly into the middle of those spinning ropes, what happens?
You're going to get hit.
You are going to get tangled immediately. You are going to take a rope to the face, you will trip everyone else up, and the whole fluid game will come crashing to an awkward, grinding halt. To play double Dutch successfully, you have to stand on the edge and intently watch the rhythm of the ropes for a minute before you make your move.
That visual perfectly captures the danger of speaking up too soon. Sprinting blindly into the ropes in a corporate meeting looks exactly like the eager new hire who loudly interrupts the lead engineer to pitch a, revolutionary new software solution.
Oh, no.
Completely unaware that the team actually spent 6 months trying to implement that exact same software 3 years ago, and it was a catastrophic failure that cost the company $1 million.
Oh, the secondhand embarrassment is painful just thinking about it.
It shows a complete lack of situational awareness. When the text tells you to observe how people present ideas, it is not telling you to be a passive piece of furniture. It is inviting you to practice applied workplace anthropology.
Workplace anthropology, I like that.
A meeting is not just a dry mechanism for transferring factual data from one person to another. It is a live, highly concentrated demonstration of the organization's deepest culture and values.
So it's about watching the metagame again.
Yes. While you are sitting there taking notes, you aren't just learning the mundane details of the Q3 marketing campaign. You are mapping the invisible grid of the metagame. You are learning the unwritten rules of power, influence, and communication.
Okay, so what exactly am I looking for on that grid? What kind of unwritten rules should the new person actually be tracking in their notebook while they are standing on the edge of the double Dutch ropes?
You should be intensely observing the invisible behavioral dynamics. For instance, how are decisions actually justified in this room? Does this specific office value hard quantitative data above all else?
Meaning if you don't have a spreadsheet, your opinion doesn't matter.
Exactly. Or do they respond better to emotional storytelling and customer narratives? What is the conflict style? Are decisions forged through aggressive, competitive debate where people talk over each other and the loudest voice wins? Or is it a culture of polite, careful consensus where everyone patiently takes turns speaking?
That is a massive distinction, because if you bring a competitive debate style into a polite consensus culture, you are going to look like a maniac.
You'll look terribly out of place.
Exactly. You also need to figure out who actually holds the power. Hint. It is very often not the person sitting at the head of the table with the highest formal title.
Oh, that's so true.
Maybe the VP is technically in charge, but everyone subtly looks to the quiet senior analyst for approval before agreeing to anything. How is disagreement handled? Do people push back directly and say, "You're wrong"? Or do they use highly softened passive-aggressive language like, "I'm wondering if we might want to explore other options"?
So you have to decode all of that.
If you do not deeply understand these specific cultural rhythms, even the most brilliant, technically flawless idea you have will be immediately rejected simply because you delivered it in the wrong format for that specific tribe. Observation in week 1 is not passivity. It is aggressive, necessary data collection.
Active data collection. I love framing it that way. You are a spy learning the local customs.
Pretty much. But eventually, the observation period ends. Eventually, someone is going to turn to you. You are the shiny new hire, the unknown variable. The conversational spotlight swings your way, the room goes quiet, and the manager says, "So, you've been listening for a while. What do you think about this strategy?"
Right, your turn to jump into the ropes.
You are forced to jump in. This is where that specific phrase from the notes comes into play. I'm still learning the process, but let's really dissect the psychological brilliance of that phrase. Because on its face, explicitly admitting out loud to a room full of experts that you are still learning sounds like admitting weakness or incompetence.
It feels like weakness, but it is actually a highly sophisticated linguistic shield. Think about the dangerous tightrope you are walking in that specific moment.
Okay.
On one hand, you need to show that you are actively listening and synthesizing information, that you aren't just a piece of furniture. But on the other hand, you absolutely cannot afford to sound arrogant, presumptuous, or dismissive of the hard work this team has been doing for months before you arrive.
Right, you don't want to step on toes.
Exactly. When you intentionally preface your thought with the disclaimer, "I'm still learning the process, but..." You are expertly, instantly managing the room's expectations. You are deliberately lowering the bar. You are paying respect to their established history and expertise.
It's kind of the verbal equivalent of holding your hands up and saying, "Hey, I come in peace. I'm not trying to hijack the ship or insult the captain. I just noticed this one small blip on the radar."
Exactly. And the magic of the psychology here is that because you intentionally lowered the expectations, any insightful, competent observation you make immediately afterward is viewed as a massive, unexpected bonus.
Oh, that's clever.
It frames your contribution as a helpful, fresh perspective from a humble outsider, rather than an arrogant, sweeping critique from a know-it-all. It perfectly balances the requirement to be engaged with the absolute necessity of being appropriately humble in a new territory.
It is such a remarkably smart way to protect your status while still adding tangible value to the conversation.
It really is.
But here is the brutal reality we have to confront about everything we have discussed so far. Navigating the delicate ping-pong serve of small talk to build baseline trust, hunting down a local tour guide to figure out the printer without triggering your amygdala.
Yeah.
Managing the profound emotional minefield of constructive feedback, and constantly acting as a hypervigilant corporate anthropologist trying to decode the double Dutch rhythm of team meetings. Doing all of this simultaneously for 8 hours a day takes an invisible, truly massive toll on the human brain.
It's completely exhausting.
Which bridges us seamlessly into the final, inescapable reality of the new job experience, and that is the profound physical and mental fatigue.
The material addresses this phenomenon head-on, and it is honestly, arguably, the most important empathetic section of the entire guide. It explicitly identifies what we can call new job exhaustion.
New job exhaustion.
Yes, it explains that during this transitional period, your brain is running at 100% capacity, burning immense amounts of energy all day long just to process basic environmental information.
Just the basics.
Right. Memorizing dozens of new names and faces, figuring out where files are saved on the shared drive, decoding the shifting cultural dynamics we just talked about.
That's so much data.
The actionable advice provided in the notes is surprisingly gentle and humane for a corporate setting. It says, be kind to yourself, actively drop the unrealistic expectation of being perfect in week 1, get plenty of sleep, and most specifically, fiercely protect your lunch break.
I think we really need to pause here and deeply validate this feeling for anyone listening who is currently in their first month of a new job or, who is about to start one. The exhaustion you feel is so deep and so heavy, it feels almost physical. Your bones literally ache at the end of the day.
They do.
You get home, collapse on the couch, and you cannot even formulate the thought of what to make for dinner. But here is the paradox. You haven't been outside digging ditches in the sun. You've been sitting in an ergonomic mesh chair in an air-conditioned room. So why does your brain feel like it has just run a marathon?
To understand why sitting in a chair makes your bones ache, we have to look at the neuroscience of cognitive load. Human brains are incredibly miraculous, efficient machines, but they consume roughly 20% of the body's total energy.
20%, wow.
Yeah. Their primary evolutionary method of conserving that precious energy is through habituation and routine. In an old, familiar job, Almost all of your routine tasks require near zero conscious cognitive effort.
Because you've done them a million times.
Exactly. Your brain has successfully automated them, moving them from your active working memory, your RAM, into long-term storage. Finding the bathroom, opening the company email software, drafting a standard weekly report, knowing exactly how to navigate around the grumpy guy in accounting. All of this happens on pure autopilot. You're utilizing your unconscious processing, which burns very few calories.
So, in a familiar job, I am basically coasting downhill mentally for half the day.
Exactly. But in a new job, that luxurious automation is entirely gone. The slate is wiped clean. Every single action, no matter how minute or seemingly trivial, requires conscious, deliberate, high-level mental processing.
Everything is a manual process.
Everything. You have to consciously map the physical route to the restroom. You have to consciously parse the tone and subtext of every single email you receive. You have to actively remember if the team uses Slack or Microsoft Teams for quick questions.
It's exhausting just listing it out.
Your brain's RAM is completely maxed out just trying to render the basic physics of the new environment. The cognitive friction of having to actively think about everything is immense, and that constant neural firing generates profound biological exhaustion.
This brings up a massive, almost tragic workplace irony. It is a trap that almost every single ambitious professional falls into.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Right. In the first week, because you are dealing with that imposter syndrome and feeling completely useless at the actual work, there is this immense, crushing internal pressure to look incredibly dedicated and hardworking to your new boss.
You want to prove your worth.
You want to visually prove to them that they made a great hire. So what do people do? They arrive an hour early, they stay 2 hours late, and they work straight through lunch, eating a sad, dry protein bar at their desk while staring intensely at a spreadsheet they barely understand.
Yep, the classic mistake.
Yet, the material we are studying explicitly commands you not to skip lunch. It commands you to physically step away from the work. The irony is so thick. It is exactly like showing up to run a 26-mile marathon and sprinting the very first mile as absolutely fast as you can.
Marathon sprint trap.
Yes, you burst off the starting line sprinting like a maniac just to look incredibly fast to the crowd gathered at the start line. You want everyone to say, wow, look at that new runner go. And you do look incredibly impressive for about 5 minutes. And then, because you completely ignored pacing, biology, and energy management, your muscles fill with lactic acid and you completely collapse on the side of the road by mile 3.
That is the trap of performative workaholism, and it is deeply, fundamentally counterproductive to actual long-term success. When the text advises you to get a full night of sleep, to take an actual physical lunch break away from your screen, and to temporarily lower your bar for absolute perfection, it is absolutely not advocating for laziness.
No, not at all.
It is not suggesting you shouldn't care deeply about your work. It is asserting a biological fact. Self-care is a foundational performance metric. Let's go back to the idea of cognitive load. If your brain's RAM is maxed out just navigating the physical geography of the building and the social dynamics of the break room, you have absolutely zero bandwidth left for the high-level, complex, strategic job you were actually hired to do.
You literally do not have the battery power left to be smart.
Exactly. If you do not give your brain a chance to physically reset, by stepping away from your desk, letting your eyes focus on the horizon instead of a screen, getting fresh air, or sleeping 8 hours so your brain can clear out metabolic waste, your cognitive abilities will degrade rapidly and noticeably.
You'll just start failing at the basic tasks.
You will start making silly, uncharacteristic mistakes on simple documents. Your emotional regulation will start to slip, meaning you will respond poorly and defensively to that feedback we talked about earlier. Taking a lunch break isn't a luxury or a sign of weakness. It's a required pit stop in a Formula One race.
I love that. You don't skip the pit stop because you want to keep driving fast. You take the pit stop so your tires don't literally explode on the next lap, crashing your car into the wall.
Right.
Giving yourself permission to not be perfect, physically stepping away from the desk to let your brain's engine cool down, that is how you ensure you actually survive to make it to month 3 when the metagame finally starts to make sense and the automation kicks in.
Precisely. And it is crucial to remember that this intense exhaustion is entirely temporary. The neuroplasticity required to build those new neural pathways and internalize the new rules takes a massive amount of energy. But it takes time.
It won't be this hard forever.
No. Eventually, the new environment will become automated. The second floor printer won't be a terrifying mystery. The small talk will become natural and effortless, and you will understand the deep rhythm of the meetings well enough to jump into the double Dutch rope seamlessly.
Oh,
But you have to fiercely protect your cognitive engine while that invisible automation process is happening in the background.
this has been an incredibly revealing journey today. Let's take a breath and look back at the massive landscape we've mapped out.
We covered a lot.
We really did. We started by looking at the terrifying prospect of sitting down at a complex new board game, realizing that the rulebook of our technical skills is only half the battle. And we've systematically decoded the social metagame step by step.
The real game.
Right. We learned that surviving isn't about proving you are a genius on day one. It starts with mastering the gentle ping-pong serve of small talk, utilizing the universal reality of the weather, and open-ended questions, not to be fascinating, but to signal to the primate tribe that you are safe, approachable, and ready to groom.
Yes.
We learned the absolute tactical necessity of finding your local tour guide, that informal, peer-level buddy who creates a vital zone of psychological safety where you can ask how to unjam the printer without triggering your amygdala's fear of the resource-controlling professor.
And we completely reframed the dreaded feedback loop. We explored how the microfeedback of the weekly one-on-one de-escalates the biological threat response, allowing you to separate your core identity from the salty soup.
Yes, the soup.
And we learned the ultimate defensive maneuver, proactively asking your manager how you can improve, putting you firmly in the driver's seat of your own growth and neutralizing the power imbalance.
Then we became hyper-observant workplace anthropologists, standing patiently on the edge of the double Dutch jump rope, taking notes on the unwritten cultural rules of power and communication before using brilliant linguistic shields to contribute our ideas humbly.
The linguistic shield is key.
And finally, we validated the profound physical reality of new job exhaustion, recognizing that cognitive load is a biological limit, and protecting that limited bandwidth through sleep and actual lunch breaks is the ultimate non-negotiable performance hack.
Absolutely.
All of these profound psychological steps, drawn from a practical guide for language learners, are the universal keys to making a new job not just survivable, but truly sustainably successful.
It is a remarkable progression to trace. We moved from the most basic, instinctual verbal grooming all the way to complex, high-level cognitive energy management. But before we finish today, I want to pivot entirely.
Okay, let's do it.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, slightly provocative thought to chew on. A complete perspective shift. We have spent this entire deep dive focusing intensely on the vulnerability, the fear, and the sheer social strategy required of the new guy.
Right.
We've explored how much intentional effort and invisible energy it takes to navigate a foreign space. But consider this undeniable fact. Time passes. Eventually, the newness always fades.
You don't stay new forever.
Eventually, you will learn the house rules of the board game. You will become the seasoned, comfortable veteran. You will be the person who knows exactly how to unjam the printer without looking, who knows the complex history of every failed project, who inherently knows the unspoken power dynamics of the meeting room.
That's true. You eventually become the expert.
So the provocative question is this. When you finally reach that coveted position of comfort, security, and authority, what are you going to do with it?
Oh, wow.
Are you going to hoard that institutional knowledge to protect your own status? Or, knowing intimately how much cognitive energy and terrifying vulnerability it takes to be new, are you going to actively, intentionally create the psychological safety that you once so desperately needed on your very first day? Are you going to be the person who gently taps the ping pong ball back over the net when a terrified new hire asks you about the rain?
That is an incredibly powerful question to leave on, because the metagame never actually stops playing out. We just change which side of the board we are sitting on as the years go by. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. As you head out there to tackle whatever new, complex environment you are facing, whether it is your very first day or your 1000th day, remember to be kind to yourself, take a deep breath, and please, for the sake of your brain, go take a proper lunch break. We will see you next time.